Well, with electricity prices through the roof and the very real risk of further blackouts and price hikes because of the idea of climate catastrophism that's driving our energy policy, there has now suddenly been an outbreak of truth-telling which may signal that the debate is turning. A second Coalition MP has broken ranks and declared Australians are not being told the truth about the impact on cost of living of net zero policies. Renee Heath was the only Coalition MP to sit out a vote accelerating economically harmful net zero targets that occurred last week in the Victorian Parliament. It follows Queensland Senator Matt Canavan's declaration last week that Australians were being lied to about net zero by politicians from both sides, including his own. These revelations came on a show with my fellow ADH TV co-host, Alexandra Marshall. I recommend you go back and watch her show and her interview with Matt Canavan. Now, the outbreak of truth has been long coming and is necessary if the cost of living crisis, in large part, as I say, driven by disastrous climate alarmist policies over many years, is to be addressed. Now, Family First has long argued that net zero through windmills and solar panels is unachievable and should be paused until a proper economic and engineering study is done on the costs versus benefits. Family First welcomes the Coalition MPs' rebellion against the Labor, Liberal, Green, Teal consensus on climate alarmism. The Albanese government's targets require at least 20,000 solar panels to be installed each day and 40 giant wind turbines a month on a hill somewhere near a farm near you, and tens of thousands of kilometres of new transmission lines costing at least $1.5 trillion by 2030 and trillions more in the decades to come. Now, last week's Victorian Labor bill, supported by the Liberals and the Greens, accelerates net zero madness at the state level, trashing the property rights of farmers while making electricity even more expensive and even more unreliable. The Herald Sun reported that Renee Heath said the targets threaten to drive up costs, eliminate jobs and accelerate Victoria's downward economic spiral. She said, quote, "Why are we misleading the public and saying this is going to deliver savings? Wind and solar can only be commercially successful when they are the recipient of a subsidy. But how can a state that is broke offer a subsidy? In order to reach these targets, we would need to install 22,000 solar panels per day, build 40 wind turbines per month, and build the transmission infrastructure to support this. This is completely unachievable." Well said, Renee Heath. Now, despite defying Liberal leader John Pesutto, who demanded that the Victorian Coalition vote with Labor and the Greens, Heath said she still supported his leadership. Now, it's a shame rigid party discipline forces people like Heath to say such things when clearly Pesutto's behaviour over his defamation and expulsion of Moira Deeming, his support for making gender fluid and sexualised drag queen role models for children, and his adoption of woke energy policies make him a poor fit for the Conservative side of politics. But hey, that's politics. His break with coalition policy on electricity coincided with Family First Senate candidate Bernie Finn's public meetings held last week in Gippsland, an area that Heath represents in the state's upper house. Now, whether Family First's push into Gippsland was a factor or not, it is good to see Coalition MPs moving towards Family First policy and starting to tell the truth about the net zero fantasy.